So, have you ever wondered why some countries seem to be losing their religion while others are holding on as tightly as ever? It's a massive global shift, right? And the answer, well, it's not simple. It's a mix of economics, of social safety nets, and even how faith itself is kind of packaged and sold. We're about to dive into three really compelling theories that try to explain it all.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's start with a puzzle. On one hand, you've got the United States, a super modern, wealthy nation where a lot of people go to church. But on the other hand, you have Sweden, just as modern, just as wealthy, but it's one of the most secular places on the entire planet.
So what is going on here? Why the massive gap? Is it something about their culture, politics, or is it something else entirely? That's the big question we're going to try and answer, and I think the explanations are going to surprise you.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at faith as a kind of marketplace. Then we'll think about it as a safety net for when life gets tough. And finally, we'll explore this wild idea called the Disney effect. After that, we'll check out a real-world case study from the UK to see how these ideas hold up before putting it all together.
All right, first up, the religious marketplace. This idea basically says that to really understand belief, we need to stop thinking like theologians for a minute and start thinking a bit more like economists. So the core idea here is pretty straightforward. It sees religious organizations, churches, temples, mosques, as competing businesses. And we, the people, are the consumers, kind of shopping around for the faith that gives us the best spiritual deal. And how do you figure out that deal? Well, you're doing a kind of cost-benefit analysis in your head. The costs are things like your time, your money, your level of commitment. And you weigh that against the benefits, things like less stress, a sense of community, or maybe the promise of an afterlife. And this is where the theory gets really interesting. Look at the USA. It's got this huge, diverse marketplace with thousands of different denominations. So much choice. The theory says that with so many options, more people are likely to find a religious product that they actually like. Now, compare that to the UK, where historically one state church has been the main option. According to this theory, less competition means fewer customers, and that leads to lower religious participation overall. But, no theory is perfect. And this one hits a bit of a wall when you look at a country like Poland. Here, you've got one institution, the Roman Catholic Church, that has a near monopoly, and yet religious participation is incredibly high. So that kind of suggests that choice can't be the whole story. So, if the marketplace idea doesn't explain everything, let's bring in our second theory, the existential safety net. This one shifts our focus away from economic choices and onto a much more fundamental human need, our need for security. The existential security theory basically argues that religion works like a cosmic safety net. It gives us comfort, reassurance, especially when life feels risky and uncertain. But what happens when life becomes a whole lot less uncertain? Well, the theory says our need for that religious safety net just starts to fade away. And this creates a pretty clear path to secularism. When a society builds up high levels of security, through wealth, strong welfare programs, good healthcare, like in places like Sweden or Denmark, people just feel less vulnerable day to day. This reduces the demand for religious comfort, which then naturally leads to lower participation. This brings us right back to that original puzzle, doesn't it? The United States is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. So if this theory is right, shouldn't it be way more secular? Why is it such a major exception to the rule?
And the theory has a really clever answer. It says it's not about a country's total wealth, but about how secure its individual citizens feel. Because the US has so much more inequality and a weaker social safety net than a lot of other developed nations, a huge chunk of the population still faces real insecurity. And it's that personal vulnerability, the theory argues, that keeps pushing many Americans toward religion for that safety net.
Okay, so we have a theory about choice and a theory about security. Our third theory, though, it comes at this from a completely different angle. It argues the key isn't just if people believe, but how religion itself is changing to stay alive in our consumer-driven world. This is called Disneyisation. And yeah, it's pretty much what it sounds like. The idea is that religion is becoming more like a theme park. It's getting simplified, cleaned up, and packaged to be super easy to consume. The hard parts, the complicated theology, the uncomfortable bits, they get stripped away, leaving a kind of dumbed-down version that's easier for a modern audience to swallow.
And the term itself comes from a perfect, almost too good to be true example, an event called the Harvest Day Crusade, where Christian performers literally took over Disneyland for a day. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This blending of the sacred with pop culture is the absolute essence of Disneyisation, religion repackaging itself to be more accessible, more entertaining, and maybe a little less demanding.
All right, so we've got these three really big ideas. But what does all this look like in the real world? To put some hard numbers to these theories, let's zoom in on a specific case study, the United Kingdom.
And the trend in the UK is, well, it's stark. If you go back to 1930, almost a third of the whole population were official church members. Now fast forward to 2013, and that number has cratered to just over 10%. That's a massive cultural shift in just a couple of generations.
And that decline shows no signs of slowing down. Projections show that by 2025, formal church membership in the UK could drop all the way to 8.4%. You can really see how all three of our theories could be playing a part in this, right? A less competitive religious market, a really strong state safety net, it all adds up.
But this goes deeper than just who's on the membership rolls. This is about identity. A survey from 2014 found that a clear majority, 53% of people in the UK, said they were not religious. Only 30% identified as religious. That firmly places the UK among the most irreligious countries on Earth.
So, we've looked at three very different theories and some pretty powerful data from the UK. So, which one's the right answer? Well, like with most big, complicated social changes, the real answer probably comes from putting them all together to see the whole picture.
Let's pull it all together. The religious market theory, it really helps us understand why a place with tons of choice, like the USA, can stay so religious. Existential security theory, it nails why a country with a great safety net, like Sweden, becomes so secular. And Disneyisation, well, that shows us how religion itself is adapting, becoming more of a consumer good just to stay in the game. They aren't competing ideas, they're more like different lenses you can use to see the same complex reality.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If religion's power is so closely tied to our basic human need for security, then maybe the biggest question for our future isn't about if we believe. Maybe the real question is, in a world that feels more and more uncertain, where do we turn to find our safety net? What provides our security?